I used to think it was treating myself, going, oh, I love myself, so I bought myself a new pair of shoes. I love myself, so I went to the spa. I love myself. I indulged in some way or the other.
You're going to start being your friend to you. Be that first. Same way that you are a friend to other people, you need to be that same friend to yourself.
Hello and welcome back to the part 2 of our February question and answer session, all to do with everything love. In this session, we're going to be talking about the most important relationship of all, the relationship that you have with yourself. This time, I'm joined with two of my great friends, Rima and Kerry. Hello, ladies, and thank you for joining me. So let's start with our first question, and that is, what advice would you give to someone who has difficulty putting themselves first?
Well, I would say that the first thing you need to do is to look at being your own best friend. So my benchmark is I shouldn't be allowed to say whatever I want to myself and treat myself any way that I want, because actually, you know what? We know what buttons to press to really wind ourselves up. Nobody's better at beating ourselves up more than we can beat ourselves up. Nobody can do it better than we can, because we know exactly what to press. So when I'm having those conversations with myself, I think, if a friend had said that to me, would I be okay with it? If the answer is no, then I know that that's not what I should be saying to myself. And the odd occasion, I do have to apologise to myself and say, you know what, Kerry, that's not acceptable for you to speak to yourself in that way. When are you going to start being your friend to you? Be that first. Same way that you are a friend to other people, you need to be that same friend to yourself. That's the start. Not always easy, and you will fall down, but you get back up and you start again. You apologise as you would to a friend, and then you get back on the horse and you keep going.
Rima?
I have similar conversations, but because I have been an educator for many years, I have similar conversation, but with a child. And most of us, we have very gentle and very kind conversations with children. And I would say, talk to yourself as if you're a child. Either your own child or someone else's child who is in distress, who is not happy with their results, or who is who needs gentle or not so gentle encouragement. Because we do have our inner children, but we have, some of us have them very well hidden behind daily lists of things to do, daily responsibilities, daily desires. So my suggestion would be, talk to yourself as if you are a child.
I love both answers there, and I think that I've never thought of talking to myself as though I was a child, and that's something that I might have to add to my arsenal, really. I mean, as someone who had quite a lot of difficulty with this in the past, I always felt that putting myself first, showing myself kindness was a selfish thing. Now, I know it's all kind of warped, but this is where I was. So what's worked for me is like starting small, recognizing, first of all, that prioritizing myself was neither selfish or a wrong thing to do. It was absolutely essential, because you can't pour from an empty cup. Even setting small boundaries, practicing saying no, practicing, and I've spoken of this before, practicing in front of a mirror and saying, I love you, Ade. I mean, I cannot tell you how long it took me. My toes would curl. I just couldn't do it until I could. Okay, so keep going. You know, it's not about bubble baths and spa days. It's being able to advocate for yourself. It's being able to grant yourself the time to rest when needed. It's being able to speak to yourself with care and empathy, just like you, Rima, and you, Kerry, have said. But it's also, you know, about holding space for yourself, knowing that if you haven't done something well, that's okay. You get another chance. That's what I would say to either of you ladies. I'd say, you know, that's okay. It's all right. Let's try again tomorrow. These are things that I never granted my own self, and it led me into all manner of dark spaces. And I think it's really important that we treat ourselves like our own best friend, and even as a little child. Thank you for that, because that's given me a lot of food for thought, that has.
And I think just to kind of finish that off, I think the one thing that I found particularly useful is I would pay attention to when I say yes to other people, just to make sure that I'm not saying no to myself. So whatever I say yes to, make sure it doesn't end up being a oh no to myself.
Do you mind talking a little bit more to that, Kerry, if I might ask you?
So, for example, I might have promised to, or feel like I have to promise to do something when I've already got something else planned for myself. I've then got to say, actually, no, I can't do that. I'll have to do it another time, so that I can then hold the space for myself to do what I promised myself I would do. So, you know, I'm not saying that I'm not prepared to adjust certain things where I can, but I'm not going to put myself out to say yes to somebody else, because then I'm putting their needs before my own.
Yes, and what does that say about how you
And then
value your own self?
exactly.
It's not about being selfish. It's not about not doing things for other people. It's about holding yourself important enough that you show up for yourself. And that's the other thing I miss saying. I show up for myself. I'm in tune with my own self. I'm in integrity with myself. I can't be doing everything for everybody else and then not fulfilling the purpose for which I'm here. Then I'm not showing up for myself. And
I mean, another example, I may have been committed to go to the gym 3 times a week for my health, to improve fitness levels. And then somebody says, well, can I have a lift to X, Y, and Z at a time when I know I've got an appointment for myself? I could always say yes and take them and miss my class. But actually now I'd say, no, I can't do it at that time. I can do it at another time. If that suits you, then we can come to that arrangement. But I cannot do it at this time because these are the commitments that I have for myself and for my health. And because I love
and they're important. If you don't look after yourself, you won't be there to take anybody anywhere. And that's the lesson. Okay, the next question. Thank you, ladies. What reminds you of your own strength, especially on tough days? I think basically, what can you draw on? What experiences or what about yourself do you think that gets you through tough days?
Well, I realise that tough times don't last. And I know that I've overcome so much, even things that I didn't think I could overcome. I mean, we've all had situations where we thought, oh my goodness, how on earth am I going to get through this? This is going to break me, potentially. And then you can't join the dots looking forward, but you can join them looking back. You go, wow, I went through that. Like, whoa, you're strong, girl, you're strong. And
Does
whether
that
it's
help you, Kerry, in the moments of distress
Yes, absolutely. Because I know that I'm going through a tough time. I can't see the end of it because I'm in the middle of it. But like they say, if you're going through hell, don't stop there, keep walking.
Yeah, that's a brilliant.
One foot in front of the other. Go, 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 go. You know that eventually this has got to end because you've got through some tough things before. So you can get through this one too. Don't know how, but you will. And you won't see it now, but you will eventually, just like all the others. That's what I used to get myself through.
Thank you. Rim?
For me, my daughter is my inspiration, and very often I pull my strength from her because our relationship is very often about listening to each other. And continuously listening to each other, I've learned finally to listen to myself and use the suggestions that I give others for myself. That, you know,
A bit specific.
things like, I very often I say one of my favorite sayings is when you go through hell, keep walking. And when challenges arise, I finally started saying the same to myself. Those inspirational messages that I would say to someone else in similar situations, I finally started saying them to myself to encourage myself, to support myself, and to say, it's okay, you've done enough. What you've done is enough, and it is good enough, and many more.
Thank you, ladies. I mean, I find this particular question quite interesting because you both know my story. I've been through multiple periods of depressive illness, and during the thick of being depressed, I mean, all manner of negativities go through your mind. And I'm going to answer it by something that I came to not too long ago, actually. I was just reflecting over my life and thinking of all the little accomplishments that I've managed over my lifetime to do, in spite and despite quite challenging circumstances at times. It's things like came back to the UK, had already finished my training and then starting training again with very little money, already having one child, but we didn't have jobs, having to retrain, all of this, then going through my husband's bankruptcy with him and all the problems that caused, having to work full-time as a junior doctor with on calls and traveling many miles, initially by train and bus and then by my own car, trying to whiz back down the M25 to make sure that the children did go to their afternoon after school clubs and every other thing that they were into. Now looking at the fact that I have 3 adult, well-adjusted, very likable adult children that I enjoy spending time with. So for me, it just all came home to roost, and I said to myself, I was about to swear, thank God I didn't. I said to myself, whoa, Addie, you've done good, girl. And because of that, I just feel, yeah, I've been through the bankruptcy. I've been through no money. I've been through almost being thrown out of my home. I've been through no money twice. I've been through looking after little kids and wondering when it was going to end and not almost wanting to hit my head through the steering column at times driving. I was that stressed. But the point is, like Kerry said, here I am still standing. And I know that I can go through whatever it is that life wants to throw at me, as long as I pull into that strength, knowing that I've got my ladies that have my back, and
Mm.
knowing that I've got someone who's watching over me from above. It's not easy. It's not always hunky-dory, but that's what I rely on. God, my inner resilience, and my wonderful support, which is my friends. Question 3. I love this one. What's one thing that you were taught about love, or that you believed about love, that you later realized was not true?
For me, it's happily ever after. Happily ever after, it's the question, what is happily ever after for you?
A good question.
It's, for me, it's inner peace, communication, trust, but not those butterflies that you added earlier. So that is one of the myths that I was, to be honest with you, I was relieved to find out it's not truth, because that inner stage with butterflies, I used to find very stressful. So that is a myth.
Yeah. Carrie?
Myths. Treat others as you would like to be treated. Or have people treat you well if you treat them well. And that hasn't turned out to be true. Sometimes you have to show people how you want to be treated, and they don't necessarily know that instinctively. And if they don't do that, then I don't stay.
I think for me, the one is that you will find the one who completes you. I now think is a whole load of rubbish. Because for me, in some sense, it connoted that I wasn't whole until and unless the other person was with me. And I've since come to realize that it's a load of rubbish. And it's also a setup for horrible relationship, because I need to be whole. He needs to be whole. We need to be working on the bits where we're traumatized. Don't get me wrong, nobody's perfect, but you can be whole, and you can be continuously working on areas that perhaps you're not at your best. But you are whole on your own, and finding the right partner is complementary to who you are, just as you should be complementary to who they are, in terms of support, in terms of love, in terms of being there, in terms of being a sounding board and all of that. But no, I'm not waiting to be happy and fulfilled if you're not in my life. I'm fulfilled on my own. You're fulfilled on your own, and we come together, and a great thing can come of that. I think also that thinking there's a happily ever after, I'm so grateful for the way Rimmer put it, that what's the definition of happy? And I have to agree that inner peace, being grounded, being on purpose, for me is what is inner peace. And that, again, it's all linked, isn't it? Showing people your boundaries, letting them know how you want to be treated, and basing that off
right.
systems. All of that is all really, really important. But I can be at peace.
And that's really important.
To make me happy.
Absolutely.
I find happiness within me. And I think that unless we come to that point in our lives, I'm afraid life just doesn't take any prisoners. I mean, stuff's going to happen that's going to knock you for six. And if we can't find the thing we need on the inside, by the grace of God, if you believe in him, or the universe, whatever you believe in, there's no way, like, nobody's happy all the time, as in happy that everything is going all right. That's not the kind of happy that I'm talking. Circumstances are sometimes great and sometimes not great, even in the space of one day. So how it's supposed to be that I've got to deal with whatever's coming my way, you're dealing with everything that's coming your way, we're dealing with stuff that we need to do together, and life is happening. And you're not going to have times when things are not actually hunky-dory and all smooth wave patterns. I think you're not going to get that even as an individual. How do you honestly expect that you're going to come together with a completely separate individual and somehow you're not going to face challenges? But facing challenges is one thing. Being happy isn't. They're not mutually exclusive if you're looking for happiness in the right place. That's what.
No, it's very powerful when you can look for happiness from within. And I'm glad you said, you talked about inner peace and having peace, because anything that costs you peace of mind is far too expensive.
Way
Oh,
too.
And you know what used to really bug me? When people say, my other half. Like, really? Half? I'm like, ooh, 1 and 1 makes 2.
No, I don't like my other half either. Right, so I think we've sort of covered this one. What does self-love mean to you, and how has your definition evolved over time? But I would like to speak to more to the evolved part, because I certainly know that I used to think it was treating myself, go, oh, I'm loving myself, so I bought myself a new pair of shoes. I love myself, so I went to the spa. I love myself. I indulged in some way or the other that brought me those fleeting bits of happiness. And please don't get me wrong, moments of joy are great, and I thoroughly recommend them, as long as, no, I won't say as long as what. I'll allow you to answer the question, and then maybe I'll pop in my 2 cents. So it's not about having the bubble baths and going to the spa, although all that is part of it. Yeah, my feeling about self-love has completely changed. Do you think that you used to think differently as to what it means when you just heard the term self-love?
A long time I didn't actually know what that meant. I mean, I've heard the word, but what does it really mean? What does it look like? And I've asked so many people, and I could never really get a comprehensive response as to what that is. And then I realised that for me, it meant not accepting less than what I deserve.
Do you expatiate? Because that's a huge biggie, if you ask me.
I think sometimes we can shrink down to fit in with whatever circumstances we find ourselves in. And by doing that, I mean, I'm not saying it's not the same as compromising. It's not the same as compromising. But when you know that you know your value and you're accepting less than that, you know it. Inside, you know it, because then there's that voice that doesn't shut up. And it won't shut up until you give yourself what you know you're worth. That's the only way I can think of describing it to you, because, you know, for me, if I'm accepting less, I feel it. I know it. I go.
Rima?
I had incredibly similar understanding of self-love like you did, Ade. You know, treating myself to nice dress, to nice meal. And now that I think back, I had very good example in my mum, but I didn't understand I didn't see it as an example. It was, you know, she was incredibly busy lady, working as an accountant, running multiple companies, doing accounts for multiple companies, independently, not as a company. She used to have, she has 2 kids. She raised 2 kids. In those days, in my country, it was popular to have an allotment. So that meant, evening drives to the allotment to do weeding and to do planting and to do everything in between. Not only that, her mum used to run a farm. So when it was a season, pretty much from March till October, weekends would be on the farm. But despite the fact, every Sunday evening, she would leave us to deal with our uniforms, to do whatever needed to do ourselves. But she would retrieve into the bathroom and have at least 2 hours to herself. Facials. In those days, we couldn't go to a store and buy a facial, so she used food products, to make her own masks.
Oh, wow.
Masks, manicures, pedicures, but that time to herself. And now, instead of purchasing, instead of exchanging energy, giving money to get something, self-care is finding my peace through any activity. Would that be a conversation with a friend, walk in woods alone, or with someone else? Now that my daughter is growing, having tea parties, anything that brings and strengthens my peace.
What absolute wonderful answers you two have. Like I said, I used to think it was about indulging. The other thing I used to think was that excuse me, my self-worth was tied up in achievement.
Mhm.
I'm almost ashamed to say that I was always looking to the next thing, and never really just being, which, and for me, it was like, oh, you've done well if you've achieved something. I never allowed myself to actually look at what I had done well, because there was always something else to be doing. And so now I really see it as integrity of me. I don't know how to put, because integrity to me means that things align. So that my actions are in alignment with my values, with my boundaries, and with honoring myself in a way that goes beyond surface level care. For me, perhaps the most important thing is for me being on purpose. I know what I'm here to do, and I'm about doing that in a way that honors God and honors my person because of the value systems that I have. So that would mean, like you, Rima, I would love to go for a walk in the woods. It's my happy space. Nature calms me. Water, being, by a beach, it calms me. But I'm there for the reason of I am meditating, I am thinking things through, or I'm being creative when I go and do an art class and produce something. And so, yes, I'm happy when I go buy a pair of shoes, but it's not what I'm thinking of. I'm not thinking this is going to produce, this is self-care. I'll go and buy a pair of shoes because I want to buy a pair of shoes, but it's nothing to do with self-care. Self-care to me is being true to who I really am and being in alignment with myself and holding space for myself, not being constantly critical of me, being able to pat myself on the back when I've done well, and not being constantly looking forward to the next thing and not acknowledging anything that I have done, good or bad, just onwards and to the next thing, which is not what it means to me today, thank goodness. Right, so I think we go on now to our next set of questions, which is about emotional well-being and boundaries. Somehow I think we've talked a lot about this already, and I wonder if we actually need to. But there is one question that I want to talk about because I think it's really important, and that is, what are people so afraid of? Why do they put up with abusive behavior in relationships when they know that they deserve better? What is the fear behind it?
It's fear of the unknown. There are lots of other fears, lots and lots of them. But I think it ultimately boils down to, if I go, what will that look like? I know what it looks like when I stay. I know the devil that I'm with at the moment, or the situation. It's the devil you know rather than the devil you don't. And it could be all sorts of reasons. It could be financial reasons. It could be emotional reasons. It could be for the sake of the children. It could be so many other things. But if they step out of that frying pan, are they going to be stepping into a different fire that they don't know or understand, or one that they'll have to get to know? And so some people stay because it's a familiar devil.
I hear that, and I think it's true for many. Let me hear from Rima first, as next, please, and then let's see. Because I got questions coming off Kerry's statements, see, so, and I don't want to go off on a tangent yet.
I absolutely agree with Kerry when she says the fear of the unknown. And at the same time, I would like to add, recently I got to learn that some people stay in those situations to reach certain goals. It was very unexpected for me to learn that, but it is the case. So, for example, it could be as simple as to pass driver's license, or to get visa into another country. So once those goals are achieved, people are ready and they take action to leave those negative situations, to leave those negative relationships. Does that?
You're saying at that point that they're laying foundations in order to be able to leave.
Which is a different thing, isn't it? But although it follows on from it, I tend to agree very much with Kerry that, it's all seated in some sort of fear, some deep-seated emotional trauma. The fear is, I won't be able to pay for myself, for my children, or I'm psychologically dependent on this person, and what am I going to do without them, even though they know that, it's not a good place for them to be. Some people are afraid of being alone, or my neck of the woods in Nigeria, societal judgment, because we are still very much a society in Nigeria that looks at women who leave their matrimonial homes as though something is wrong with you, and people generally don't stop to ask or feel that there might be something wrong with the other person. There's this misconception that, women make the home. I mean, I'm not saying that it's a misconception in its entirety, but so if your home is broken, it's because you haven't done well to put it together, and that's not often the truth. Of course it can be, but it's not. Other people are just got very low self-worth, believe they probably won't find any better, or they've been conditioned to tolerate mistreatment. So breaking free first means you recognize that you're afraid, to me. And then secondly, you seek support. Thirdly, you have an exit plan, because, you know, like Rimmer, you sort of alluded to, you need to have a plan. Otherwise, those fears will continue to keep you stuck, and you will never be able to leave. But if you can't make a plan of your own, seek support. It could be from friends, it could be from a professional person, but anybody that you trust. What are the issues? Understand clearly what your issues are. Are they financial? Okay, what do I need to do? How much do I need? Or where do I need to be relocating to? Or whatever it is that the issues are, and put a plan in place. I believe strongly that action is what breaks the fear cycle. And if you can just get going on a little bit of the plan, then you will be able to break free. But if you can't identify what the exact fear is, you can't put a plan in place. You won't be asking for help, and you're never going to leave.
And those are the hardest prison bars to escape from, the ones that are in your mind, because those are bars that you can't see, but they keep you bound so tightly you wouldn't believe.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Totally agree. Totally agree. And then the other one is how do you differentiate between love and emotional dependence in relationships? That's a really interesting question. Over to you, ladies. What's the difference between love and emotional dependence?
Well, it could be that you feel that you can't operate without that other person. Perhaps. I don't know. I can't say that I've ever been emotionally dependent upon anybody. I've never allowed that situation to arise. So I've seen people that I thought were emotionally dependent, and they seem to stand for nothing. Therefore, they fell for everything. They didn't seem to have. They seem to be followers and just do what they're told, and everything that they did was just to keep the peace. They were placaters. And that's as much as I can really say about that on my, from my experience.
What do you think, Rema?
I have an analogy that love is two-way street, when dependency is one-way street. In the sense that, in loving relationship, there is communication, there is aim to understand, possibly not always understanding, but there is aim to understand each other, to support each other, to respect each other's values, in each other's opinions. When in dependency, it's just, as Kerry, I believe, mentioned, the desire to please and do for the sake of peace, not to please the other person, possibly for this, to avoid conflict, possibly to get something in return without any guarantee. When in love, things happen naturally, as naturally as water flows.
Some interesting points there. Not sure I buy into all of them, but how do I put this? I feel that dependency it's a form of trauma. You've been traumatized that much by something or things in your past, and that you haven't healed from, and that you feel you need somebody else to add, and you cannot be without the person. And that's where, you know, codependency can go on from dependency, where each person is receiving something they desperately need from the other. It's not always like that. Situations where one person has the need to be controlling, they find somebody who has the need to
be controlled.
be controlled for whatever reason, and they come together, and it's a negative cycle of toxicity that never ends, but they don't want to be without the other person nonetheless. It's a terribly unhealthy thing. I feel true love is freeing. I feel dependence is very restrictive. I feel love adds to your life and dependence makes you feel like you can't function. I think we're in danger as probably strong women who have worked on our own selves, and that as coming across as though we've got everything together and we've never had issues. That isn't true.
No.
The truth of it is you can't stay in a thing that you know is wrong for you. You've got to be able to sit with yourself and look deep to where are these things coming from, and get help if you need to get help, but you need to heal. You know, does this relationship enhance my sense of well-being? Does it diminish me as a person? Does it seek to diminish my sense of self? Does it support my autonomy, my independence, and my growth, rather than leading me to anxiety and loss of personal identity, which is what you find in a lot of dependent, whether one-way dependent or both-way dependent relationships? And I think when we look at it in that way, then I think that perhaps, I think what I'm trying to say is that we need to be constantly examining our own selves and seeing, are there things that I'm not showing up for myself the best way possible? And it's only when I show up for myself and heal my traumas that I can really be there properly and in a healthy manner for the people who I love. I don't know if that resonates with both of you.
Yeah, no, I can see that. You know.
And in a way, it's sort of like, that's how you set your boundaries, isn't it? It's how you show other people how to love. If you don't know, if you're not,
Well, you don't have a hope in hell of teaching anybody else, then do you?
oh no, you can't. Or if your way is rooted in fear of rejection, if your way is rooted in thinking somebody else is needed before you can be whole, and all the other ways that we've been speaking of. Yeah. And if you're not healed from your trauma, then
It's absolutely true, because if you don't show the other person who you are, the other person will tell you who to be.
That's so true.
that is profound, Rem.
That's very
I'm not saying anything beyond that. Perfect. I don't know what else to say. I'll be chewing on that one for a good few days, I think. Okay. How do you rebuild yourself after heartbreak or disappointment? Have you ever had your heart broken?
No, I have to say that every time it's different. It's different journey, it's different recovery, because only now I come to realize that I am a different person. And as a result, my healing process is different too. But what is constant in every recovery is that I'm truly blessed with two amazing friends, and they always lend me a listening ear. So I am going through huffing and puffing process and screaming and shouting and very often crying. So I let it out. I let it out. At some point, acceptance is coming, but possibly before acceptance, there is a lot of healing and being. That phase of being is always different for me, and lately, the process of being is creating. And creation, I come to accept that that's it. It's time for a new cycle. I think it sounds a bit like grieving.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Rimmer. It's different each time. The older you get, and I think it also depends on how close you are to the person that, you know, you're no longer with. Often, I'm gonna confess, I go into bitch fest first. And that's, and I do that with my friends. And I complain, and I this, and I that, and I let it all out. And then I go, well, actually, it wasn't really my fault. I've probably been saved from something. My mother always used to say, every disappointment is for a good. And then I think, right, that was a lucky escape, even though it didn't feel good. And I go, come on, girl, you need somebody with bigger hands to carry your crown. So what I do is I throw myself into the things that I know I'm good at. And I get validation from those things. And then before you know it, I don't know who was that? So, you know, and I build from there. So I just realized that the one constant person in my life is me. And as long as I haven't abandoned me and I haven't rejected me, then nobody can reject me.
Ooh, another profound thought. I'm thinking I just want to go and ruminate over these things. Amazing answer. I'm not even sure I want to answer after that. Well, excuse me. I think my process is, and again, like you said, it has evolved over time, but now I would allow myself to grieve, because if I'm that invested with that person that they disappoint me and break enough to break my heart, I believe it is a grieving process. And I allow myself and acknowledge those emotions that I'm grieving. I feel bereft. I'm angry. I'm disappointed. I'm hurt. And allowing myself the permission to experience them rather than, yeah, that's the other thing I used to do when I was younger. I would lock them away in a particular room in my head and not visit them and just carry on as though nothing had happened until the scenes would burst loose and everything would come out, and it was just not good. So now I acknowledge, and I think that the other thing is to know that it's safe to acknowledge them. I think locking them up was a sort of defense mechanism, a way of not dealing. But now I realize I have to deal, because if I don't deal, it won't work out well for me over time.
You end up with a lump in the rug.
Well, or worse.
Because it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And pent up emotion, feeling, anger, and all of this can have real physical effects on our mental and physical health that I'm just not prepared to allow another person to have all that power. So I need to go through the process. And in the process, like you both said, I practice self-care, go and engage in activities that nurture my well-being, exercise, pursuing my hobbies, spending time in nature, you know, even going on a spa day if I feel that that's what I need. Going out with my crazies also helps. And then, you know, it's seeking support, and you've both alluded to that. I'm so blessed to have a great set of wonderful friends, a good family, and I've also got other support in groups and that I'm involved with. So sharing those feelings with trusted one person, trusted groups of people can really provide different perspective and provide comfort, and that's what you need. And then, you know, over time, when I've healed enough, it's probably consider what the experience has taught me, about my needs, about perhaps what I don't want to get into in the future, or where I allowed for certain things to happen. It's just the process of me being able to grow from the experience. That's not going to happen at first, I don't think. I think the grieving thing is the first thing, and then I think I hope that from that I'll be able to set new aspirations for myself, channel my energy into different goals. I mean, maybe I thought it was going to be this way, maybe I was going to live with you forever and it hasn't worked out. Then I need to envision a world where this person is no longer part of my tomorrows and set different goals for me. And it's a journey. I think sometimes it depends, like I don't know if it was Rimmer or Kerry that said, you know, it depends on the relationship and etc. etc. But if it's devastating, just do excuse me. If it's devastating, then, you know, it may take a bit of time. So I would say encourage yourself to recognize that it's okay when it's not okay. And if you really need it, seek help professionally. Okay, so my last question, and possibly my absolute favorite question of the lot at this point in time, is this one about societal and cultural influences on love. Now, we're all from slightly different parts of the world ethnically. Rema, you're Eastern European. I'm British, but also Nigerian. And Kerry is British Jamaican. So this should make for a rather interesting discussion. How do cultural and societal expectations shape the way we experience love and relationships? And maybe if I try and put some more flesh on the bones, I know where I'm ethnically from. In my culture, you're not marrying the person alone. You're marrying their whole family. There are ceremonies involved. The gentleman would have to go and tell his intended spouse's father formally that he would like to marry her, and that it is serious. This is way before you even meet any family. You've got to meet the father. In the West, say, you could fall in love and 2 days or 3 days later come home to your parents with an engagement ring, grinning from ear to ear, saying, "I'm engaged." I mean, I think if you did that to a Yoruba father, I'm too old to be dead, but when I was younger, I think they'd think that you'd gone crazy, you know. So this is the sort of thing that I'm thinking about. How do you experience love? What are the cultural things, good or bad, that surrounded your perception of what love and relationships and, you know, perhaps more so permanent relationships are all about?
Kerry, are you gonna go first or shall I?
Chicken.
I'll pass. I'll let you answer.
Okay, so to those interested, originally I'm from Lithuania, and it used to be just like in Nigeria, you marry the whole family, and the weddings used to be 3 days, and you know, yes, it used to be a big massive parties, but there were rituals before couple was going to the ceremony of the wedding, and after getting to the place of the party. The regime has changed. We broke free from communism. A lot of information flooded all sources possible, and all of a sudden we are exposed to Western understanding of love and courtship. At that time, it was very common to watch Indian Bollywood movies, which had influence on young people. And it was shock to me and my family when my brother was getting married. That was another 10 years later. He was getting married, and his wife to be and him chose to invite parents, siblings, and good friends only. So traditionally, you would expect a wedding to be at least 150 guests. And all of a sudden, there were only 26 on the list. So that was a big shock. And I always, for me, love was my private journey. I remember like today, my grandma, and I remember that after some good weeding, we were washing our hands over a well, and she asked, "So, is there someone in your life?" And of course, the answer was positive. "So, are you going to marry him?" It's like, "Grandma, only time will show." And yeah, so it was always my private journey, and only when I got engaged, my parents would get to know that I'm with someone and who's the person.
Oh gosh, well, I'm born and bred in England and with Jamaican parents, and it was a case of you find somebody on your own, go and sort it out yourself. I trust that you'll make the right decision, and that person will ask me if it's okay to marry you. So this is speaking, they'd have to go to my dad and ask for my hand in marriage. And, and it was because you were in love and you built a solid foundation, and this was the right person to be your teammate for life. And that was my understanding. My grandparents were together for goodness knows 60, 70 years. So all of my family have been, sort of 60-year marriages before obviously death did them part, and that was exactly what happened. But I also grew up with my best friend being from Iraq, and we were 12 when we got together. So I also grew up, I was there, we were together every day. And we have been for the last, 35 years. And so I had a second view on what marriage was all about. And that was, you don't do anything, you don't meet, you don't do anything. Your parents help you to find that person.
Mm-hmm.
You have respect. It starts with respect, not butterflies. From there, you make sure they're from a good family. So you have to ask the probing questions, and then you marry the family. If there's a case of divorce, which there was in that particular family, she was returned to the father, and he said, "I no longer want your daughter because X, Y, and Z," and she goes back to live in the family home. But you do not leave home and you do not cohabit with anybody until you are married. Then you leave the family home. If you do not marry, you stay at home.
Interesting, because my culture is somewhere in the middle. In terms of, dating and all of that, my father actually used to say, I don't care. I don't really care until you bring someone home and tell me that you want to marry them. Don't introduce anybody to me. I'm not interested. And that doesn't mean that he didn't meet people, but he would just be his pleasant self and didn't take anything too serious as far as he was concerned, until his child told him, "I think this is the one." Then he needs to start paying attention. Okay. And I think I'm aware I'm of a different generation than you know, my daughter's a millennial, for example, but in my time, that is what it was. And then after I would start talking to my mum first, I think, you know, we would do what girls and mothers do. And then eventually say to my dad, yeah, this is who I think it is. And I would have to arrange a date for this man to come and see my father and my mother in my case. And I think the idea was to see who he was, ask some pertinent questions that they believe were important. And then behind you, they would also go and make inquiries as to what family they came from. Do they have any illnesses that you need to know about? Do what stock? That sounds awful, but what stock come from, basically? Are there any long-term illnesses, mental illnesses, issues? They'd also find out about the person as an individual from people who know him. All of this will happen. You wouldn't be aware of it, but they would do their research. And then it would be things like, oh, do you realize that, let's just say schizophrenia runs in that family? Are you okay with that? But we don't think it's a great idea. Or I'm not so sure that this person is good for you because we've heard this. I mean, I remember growing up, my parents discussing somebody else saying, oh, the word on the street is he's got lots of mouth but no substance. Basically, you know, he's just a gabber. He's just got he likes talking the talk, but he doesn't walk the walk. They did get married, but it didn't last. And it's interesting for all cultures where I do feel what parents are looking for in my day was some sense of compatibility, some sense that, like when I was just dating, my mother's overwhelming thing was, can this man, because I've always been the way I am. I'm an outspoken, strong personality. Can this person handle my daughter? Not in a negative way, but basically she's thinking, I don't want an insecure man who is going to change you into something that you are not, or try and diminish you in some way. Can you be yourself, and can he be secure enough in whom he is to take all of this wonderfulness on? And if the answer is no, from her point of view, she would let me know about it. And I did eventually not go further with a couple of people for that reason, because I understood. At first, it used to annoy the hell out of me, you know, but then I would sit back and really think it through and find that, no, I think there's something there by being reflective. And the funny thing is, when I did actually choose to get married to Wale, my mother really shocked me. She barely asked him anything. She was half in love with him herself before we did this anyway. So, but it's interesting, that's sort of the process. And it's only then that your parents will start thinking, oh, well, we better tell the rest of the family. And then there's two big ceremonies. And if you're a Christian or Muslim, then you want to do the religious ceremony. But in Yoruba land, the thing is, you get to know the family. It's a formal thing, and they would come formally dressed and present gifts, not much at that point, to your family to say, thank you for granting us an audience. Our son wants to marry your daughter. And you would be introduced to cousins, to aunts and uncles, yes, and clearly the mother and father, but the close family, like first degree relatives and cousins. So that's the elders as well. After that will be what they call the traditional wedding, and that's the wedding as far as Yoruba is concerned. So I suppose it's supposed to ground you in what you're doing and knowing that, you know, you're not alone and you have support, but it is changing very much so. So it's interesting, isn't it?
It is.
I think I've spoken for far too long, but at least I've given a sort of introduction to where I come from. But you know, traditions and media and family and societal norms, they do influence our beliefs as to what it should look like and what kind of person we should love, and maybe even how we express it. My husband would say that he doesn't really remember his parents telling him that they loved him, but he always knew that they loved him. Whereas I was told every single day of my of my life that I was loved, I was hugged, I was kissed, and all of this. So I don't know. I guess expressions of love, how you feel, you show love, comes from culture and how we grew up, from media, good and bad. But I think that sometimes they are good reference points, and you can find balance and grounding and in all of these things. Always it must align with your authentic self.
Mm.
And is there anything you want to add? I know I've spoken for a very long time. All right, so we've come to the end, and I've loved every minute of this with you two, and also earlier in our first episode with Kemi. I just want to again express my gratitude to you both for not just coming on this with me, but for being such great friends to me and always being there for me, and you know, contributing and sharing your knowledge, your experience with everybody listening. And remember that the journey to understanding and embracing love, it really does start within, folks. So to support everybody on this path, I have a free resource called the Self-Love Worksheet, and it's designed to help you to reflect and nurture the relationship that you have with yourself. And you can download it for free or reach out to me. The links are below, and I will send it to you. And if today's discussion resonated with you, and if you think it could help somebody else, please share it. Please subscribe, leave a review, leave a thumbs up, connect with me on social media. And until next time, continue to shine that light and embrace the love that you deserve. I cannot believe